What's up, guys? It's the Game Bro coming back to you with another F1 review. Today we're looking at the Sao Paulo GP that happened earlier today. I hope this comes out in time. We're doing another phone review. Part 2 of the triple header sees the F1 circus go to the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pace with only 4 races left in the season and less than a race worth of points separating Max and Lewis. The constructors is only a point apart. Max's dominant win last week in Mexico, causing, I would say, Mercedes to throw up a Hail Mary here and swap engines in Hamilton's car, knowing that this is really the only shot they have to put a fresh engine in, make up the space here, and, you know, the straight line advantage when that engine is fresh is just off the charts. Honda doesn't typically have an issue slowing down, but it just goes to show you, like, the new Mercedes engine is probably running at full tilt all the time now, and it's just wearing the hell out of the V6 components. So, with that turned up, Lewis taking a 5-place grid drop. Let's get into the action with FP1. As qualifying would take place hours later, FP1 saw the scramble to get the fast laps in early in the weekend and try to get the setups as close as possible in the 1 hour. A rather uneventful session saw Hamilton end up in first, nearly 4/10 up on Verstappen, with Perez and Bottas close behind. Side note that the Alpine duo's quickest times were on the mediums in 8th and 9th, and we also got to see Hamilton upset with the front end of his car, asking for big changes. It's quali on a Friday for the Speed King Award with potentially threatening weather. In Q1, we would see Latifi out-qualify Russell in single-lap pace for the first time, both Williams being eliminated. In Q2, we'd also see the loss of Ocon, Vettel, Tsunoda, Raikkonen, and Giovinazzi. As the first runs of Q3 got underway, Hamilton would continue his dominant pace in first, with all purple sectors ahead of Max and Bottas. With the final runs, Lewis would go on to take the Speed King Award with a 107.934 ahead of Verstappen and Valtteri. The rest of the order would be Perez, Gasly, Sainz, Leclerc, Norris, Ricciardo, and Alonso rounding out the top 10 to sort out the sprint qualifying on Saturday. After Max would receive a $50,000 fine for touching the penalty impending Hamilton's rear wing, Fernando Alonso would set the pace in FP2, followed by Verstappen and Bottas. Mostly race simulations saw Ferrari look strong ahead of the McLarens in the battle for third, only with a few hours ahead of sprint qualifying. So after the investigation after qualifying, Hamilton would be disqualified from his place on the grid and sent to the back for the sprint because of a DRS opening gap being too large by a very small amount. It's lights out and away we go, and Bottas gets a great start and takes the lead on the soft tires, with even Carlos Sainz getting into second for a moment after an amazing start. On the second lap, Ocon again in a sandwich like last week, causing the Alphas to touch, sending Kimi around. Not looking good for Gio with his ride on the line this week. 2 laps later, Max would get second back, as Hamilton is already into the low teens. On lap 9, Norris gets past the struggling Ferrari of Leclerc for 5th. Hamilton continues to put on a show, overtaking his way into the top 10 by halfway, outbraking Norris for 5th into turn 1 on the final lap. Bottas goes on to take the pole, ahead of a very close charging Verstappen, and Sainz would defend 3rd from Perez. Hamilton's P5 was incredible, and we'll see him start Sunday GP from 10th, after all the grid penalties, setting up for an awesome race. It's Sunday, it's race day, and it's lights out and away we go again, with Kimi starting from the pit lane after a rear wing change to a different spec, with Max altering his rear wing with the same spec, much to the dismay of Mercedes. Max gets a great start and runs up the inside of Bottas, pushing the Merc wide, and allows Perez to make the pass on Valtteri for second. At the start, Norris tried to go on the outside of Sainz and got a puncture from contact with the Ferrari. On lap 3, Hamilton is already up to 5th from 10th place. The pace is crazy. The only runner to start on the soft tires, Yuki Tsunoda, would dive real late into turn 1 on Lance Stroll, taking out his own front wing and the barge board of the Aston Martin on lap 4. On lap 5, Bottas would let Hamilton by in a position swap, and he's already in the podium position. On lap 11, Schumacher would lose his own front wing on the inside of Kimi Raikkonen in turn 1. After the safety car would come in, Hamilton would be all over the back of Perez, and on lap 18 would make the pass before getting repassed on the back straight. Next lap, Lewis would make the same move and pull clear. During the sequence of the first stops, parts of Stroll's car would bring out the virtual safety car, giving Bottas a cheap stop to get ahead of Sergio Perez. After the second round of stops, Hamilton took charge and on lap 48 would try to move on the outside of the back straightaway on Max, and both would go off track with aggressive defending from Max. At this point, Lance Stroll would retire, as well as Daniel Ricciardo, with apparent power unit issues. On lap 59, Hamilton would finally take the lead going into turn 4 with ease. On lap 61, Gasly would pass both Alpines in the span of 1 lap to not let the midfield battle slip away. On the final lap, Sergio Perez would snag the fastest lap away from Hamilton, who cruised the final 10 laps to victory ahead of Verstappen and Bottas. The rest of the points finishers are Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, Gasly, Ocon, Alonso, and Lando Norris salvaging the final point. Going into Qatar, Max now leads by only 14 points ahead of Hamilton, with Leclerc closing in on Norris to 3 points. In the Constructors, the gap widens to 11 in favor of Mercedes, with Ferrari now gapping McLaren by 31.5 points in the best of the rest. The midfield battle is still locked between Alpine and AlphaTauri, desperate for Tsunoda to help out. Man, so what did I think of it? amazing race. Not that I wanted to see Hamilton win, but I want to see this title battle get close. And now to really see it tighten up and widen out in the constructors, the next couple races are going to be pretty crazy. You're going to two tracks you've never been to before. You don't know how that's going to go. The track surface we saw earlier this year, I think in Turkey, throws them for a curveball, going to places you don't know. You're not really sure how it's going to affect each team. You know, maybe, oh, it's a Red Bull track. No, it's a Mercedes track. You think it's a Mercedes track? No, it's a Red Bull track. Maybe Ferrari do good. I mean, I can only hope. So after this race, I mean, you saw great racing. And fortunately, it was a two-stop strategy race, which was awesome because the way it looked like it could have been shifted for a one-stop, then you got, you know, conservation and all that. This we really see the guys pushing, you know, the whole race. There was a lot of places to be made up. There was a lot of overtaking. I think Alonso was the top overtake in front of Vettel. Not sure, but that's an award now. It was just a great weekend. I actually thought the sprint race was pretty good, very entertaining. I was surprised that the soft tires on a couple of those guys, especially Sainz, was able to hold off Perez. You know, I know that both the Ferrari and the Honda aren't the highest power engines, so the overtaking on that main straight wasn't much. But just to see the Red Bull not be able to do anything with the Ferrari was kind of crazy, and Leclerc struggle on the mediums a little bit for pace. Gasly, terrible start. I remember watching the replay of the start of the race, and like, wow. In the sprint, this is, he just did not get going. It looked like some of the older 80s stuff when the guys didn't get going. You had to have them swerve really hard out of the way. So that was pretty exciting. All in all, I mean, it was just a great race. Hamilton, though, I mean, this engine in the back of his car this week, who knows if it'll be that way next week or the race after. But man, on the straightaways, it was ungodly. Just listening to the RPM that thing was turning versus everyone else, just the sound of it dragging is crazy. And I mean, with their rear wing thing, like, that's something that, you know, how does that boil down to them trying to do that? Was it a wear issue with some of the activators? You never really know. And then you had Red Bull with their rear wing, you know, constantly fixing that rear wing. I guess it's reaching their terminal velocity, as said the week before, but something just seems a little off there. And ever since they had to mess with their wing earlier in the season, I think they've constantly been running into these issues. So, I mean, just to see the title battle is probably going to come down to that final race. And Max really, really defending kind of hard there. He got more than his elbows out. I want to see that onboard of him. You know, Max, you know that he pushed him wide intentionally. That wasn't, I outbrake into the corner with him. We were trying to both have the spot. I'm like, no, that was very clear that he was purposely doing it. It's not like he hit the apex or anything like that, made a mistake. That was intentional. I don't care. But Lewis was going to get him anyway. I don't think Mercedes cared too much because they know that, like, there was no stopping that. Hamilton had a clear advantage there. And going forward in the championship, they have the momentum now. He looks fired up. Mercedes is fired up. I don't think Red Bull can do anything about the constructors at this point. Unless something happens, you know, or the engines go out on Mercedes or something like that. And we did see that with Ricciardo, and I think just Ricciardo's Mercedes had an issue. I'll have to look more into that. But either way, I mean, barring any DNFs, I really think Mercedes have the constructors in hand now. It just looks a little bit too much that Perez can't do anything, and he's almost left fighting with the midfielders at times and just doesn't have the pace. So, you know, going forward in the Qatar next week, new track, I don't know who it favors. You know, there's some straightaways there. If the Merc is still at its level as it was this week, we're probably going to see it again. Or is it a Red Bull track? You don't know. That's the best part. Do we see, well, you're probably not going to see any weather there, but, you know, either way, great race. I really enjoyed the action. 2 stops, always great. The undercut wasn't that huge, but it did, you know, kind of impact. And the safety car, man, that didn't help Red Bull. The virtual safety car definitely helped Bottas stay ahead of Perez. That was a race changer right there, and maybe a constructor's change right there, you know, going into it. And Ferrari looked to clearly have the better car over McLaren. They had him pretty much covered all around. Leclerc just struggled a little bit against Norris, and that sucks for Norris's race too, that he went outside and he kind of squeezed into Carlos, I think, you know. So that's tough, but Ferrari looked to have that sewed up, and Gasly again pretty much carrying AlphaTauri on his back, but they lost out a little bit today to their battle with Alpine. So until next week, you know, great race. Looking forward to the next couple races going in, and a couple more races to go in the year. I'll see you next week in Qatar. Been the Game Bro. Have a good night.